Hello everyone, this is Ayush Raman. I want to thank the organizers, especially Professor Steve King and Professor Stephen Foley for giving me this opportunity to present my work during this pandemic. I'm grateful to them. The title of my talk is Assessment of Long Gene Misregulation in MECP2 Syndrome. I'm currently a postdoc at Broad Institute, but the work has been done in the labs of Professor Zandong Liu and Professor Huda Zogby at Baylor College of Medicine. Long gene trend is a recurring theme in the field of neuroscience. What exactly is a long gene? Long genes are defined as any gene with a gene length of more than 100 kb. It has been observed that these long genes are highly expressed in the brain tissue. And when I talk about the gene length of more than 100 kb, it means both the exon as well as the intron. And these are highly expressed in brain tissues. In last 8 years, there has been more than 25 studies that have shown dysregulation of long genes in neurological disorders. Such as autism, Angelman syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, and Rett syndrome. One of the first studies that showed long gene dysregulation was from Mark Zilka's lab at UNC Chapel Hill. The author investigated the role of topotecan in cultured neurons. In this particular plot, the x-axis is the gene length, the y-axis is the log2 fold change, D is the treatment of topotecan to cultured cortical neurons, and V is the vehicle which they compared to, or the placebo. This is a scatter plot where every point shows one gene, and based on this plot you will see that after 100 kb there is a preferential dysregulation of the long genes. Now, to summarize this particular scatter plot into a line plot, they use a bin based method where they sorted the genes with respect to the gene length. They binned the genes into 200 genes with an overlapping window of 100 genes. For example, bin 1 will have gene 1 to gene 200, bin 2 will have gene 100 to gene 300, bin 3 will have gene 200 to gene 400, and so on. And then they calculated the mean log 4 change and the mean gene length. And they plotted this particular mean log 4 change and mean gene length for every bin. Here, in the plot B, the x-axis is mean gene length, the y-axis is mean log2 fold change, and they summarize the scatter plot into this particular line plot where every point is a bin size of 200 genes with a sliding window of 100 genes. As you can see, after 100 kb, there is a preferential downregulation of this gene. For consistency purposes, we will refer to these plots as running average plot. Next, long gene trend was also observed in MECP2 syndrome. MECP2 is a X-linked gene and encodes for methyl binding protein. Loss of function mutation in MECP2 causes Rett syndrome. Rett syndrome is a rare non-inherited genetic postnatal neurological disorder that mostly occurs in girls, whereas an extra copy of MECP2 gene causes MECP2 duplication syndrome. And long gene dysregulation was reported in MECP2 syndromes. Two of the studies published in Journal of Neuroscience and Nature have shown that long gene is upregulated, whereas another study that was published in Nature Medicine suggested that the long gene is downregulated. In one of the early studies that shown that the long genes are upregulated in MECP2 knockout mouse model, what they did was they extracted the cells or the tissues from 5 different brain regions in MECP2 knockout model, and they extracted the mRNA, they did the microRNA, and after 100 kb they see preferential upregulation of the genes in MECP2 knockout model. Here the x-axis is log 10 of the gene length, so 10 to the 5 is equivalent to 100 kb. Next, in another study, the author showed that preferential dysregulation of long gene across differently publicly available MECP2 datasets, that is across hypothalamus, cerebellum, amygdala, hippocampus, and striatum, whereas opposite trend was observed in MECP2 overexpressed model or the MECP2 OE models. So there was a reciprocal relationship that was seen in the knockout and the overexpressed models. So what exactly is the long gene hypothesis in Rett syndrome? Overall, MECP2 is a repressor When there is a methylated C, MECP2 binds there and it blocks pol2 and the gene cannot be transcribed. Whereas when the MECP2 is not present in the knockout model, the pol2 can transcribe the gene and hence the mRNA can be produced. However, another study published in Nature Medicine showed preferential downregulation of long genes in nuclear and nascent RNA as represented in figure A and C, whereas in the case of whole cell RNA you see a preferential upregulation of the genes. So because of this recurring theme in neurological disease data set, it was worth examining the apparent bias more closely. Moreover, the recent literatures have suggested the transcript length bias may confound the gene expression and therefore it needs to be controlled or corrected. However, when we looked into the data sets more closely, we found that these studies have limitations and there was a lack of the use of any proper statistical test. One of the first limitation was there was an assumption of the baseline variation equivalent to 0. What I mean by that is the long gene trend in this particular plot was inferred based on y equal to 0 line, which means that the intrasample variation is equivalent to 0, which is never true. The second point was the log fold change was very small in the case of MECP2 knockout model. As you can see, the range was between 5 to 15%, whereas in the case of topotecan and treated cells, which is denoted by figure B, had a much bigger effect. Moreover, the choice of the bin size and the sliding window was arbitrary. Also, the distribution of 200 points or genes in a single bin may vary with same mean and standard deviation as shown by this GIF. The gene length distribution among differentially expressed gene was never computed, and that's why we went back to these limitations and we wanted to address these limitations by doing the reanalysis of the data set. So we took the data set and we first estimated to estimate the baseline variation, we first reproduced the original red line, which is represented in the right figure. So we reproduced it properly, and then what we did was we randomly divided the wild type samples into two groups and compared the wild type to wild type variation, which is represented by blue line, and then we calculated the confidence interval, which is represented by the shaded line. The red shaded, so it is calculated for both the red and the blue line. Typically, the confidence interval is calculated based on mean plus minus 1.96 times the standard deviation, whereas in our case, for the sake of legibility, we computed the confidence interval as mean plus minus 0.5 times the standard deviation. Then we computed two sample t-tests for each of the bin, followed by multiple hypothesis correction. So here, the bottom part of the graph, each dot represents bin of 200 genes. If it is red, it is statistically significant. If it is gray, it is not significant. The y-axis in the bottommost plot shows a log 10 transformation of these p-values, and for consistency purposes we'll call this as a overlap plot. In this case, you see that when we actually computed the baseline variation, we didn't see any preferential upregulation of the long genes. Next, we actually computed the overlap plot for the topotecan dataset, and as you can see, we see preferential upregulation of the long genes, or we see most of the genes which are most of the bins which has a mean gene length of 100 kb to be statistically significant, whereas the short genes were not, suggesting that we can use this as a positive control. Next, we actually generated the overlap plot for all the data sets, for all the MECP2 data set. For the case of amygdala, we didn't see any of the preferential upregulation of the long genes. In the cerebellum, we do see some of the bins to be statistically significant, but that way we cannot call that it is a long gene trend, because most of the bins above 100 kb are non-significant. In the case of hypothalamus, we do the same. We see the same trend. We see some of the bins to be statistically significant, but overall we don't see it, suggesting that there is no preferential upregulation of the long genes. Now, in the case of MECP2 overexpressed models or TG models, we don't see any of the preferential downregulation of the genes either in cerebellum or hypothalamus. In amygdala, we do see some of the bins to be statistically significant, but most of the bins are non-significant, suggesting that that the long gene trend disappears when the baseline variation is considered. Next, we computed the overlap plot across all the MECP2 data sets, and we don't see any of the long gene trends in most of the data set except the hippocampus. But in the case of hippocampus 9 weeks, we also see a short gene trend. So we cannot say that the long gene trend was only present in this particular data set. Next, we wanted to compute the overlap plot for the data set from Nature Medicine paper, where they looked into the nuclear RNA. And when we computed the overlap plot, we didn't see any of the long gene trend or preferential downregulation of these trend in these data set. Moreover, in the case of excitatory neuron R106W mutation and excitatory neuron T158M mutation, there are some of the long gene bins that are statistically significant, but that is mostly because of the wild type to wild type variation. As you can see in the plot, that that particular trend was much more downregulated as compared to knockout to wild type. Next, now to delve deeper about the long gene trend, we reanalyzed the human red data set. It was reported earlier that the long gene trend was observed in a human red data set. In this plot, after 100 kb, you see preferential upregulation of the genes. When we looked to this data set more carefully, we saw that there were 3 samples. It consisted of 3 samples, a pooled samples of 2 and 4 years, 1 sample of 5 year and 1 sample of 10 year with match control. And overall, it was not ideal for combining all the 3 samples together and do a running average plot. The reason being because the transcriptome of these particular 3 different samples for 3 different ages are different, and therefore it is not ideal. Plus the phenotype after 5 years, as you can see from this particular chart, differs a lot from the phenotype that is in the early years. Next, what we did was we generated the running average plot across all 3 samples separately, and we didn't see any of the long gene trend for 5 and 8 years. We do see long gene trend in the case of a pooled sample of 2 and 4 years. That is also being mimicked by the whole data set. But this particular trend cannot be statistically verified because the sample size is only one. Therefore, we went to other data sets, and again we didn't. Other human data sets, again we didn't see any of the long gene trend in either of these particular data sets. Next, we were interested to look at the gene length distribution of differentially expressed genes. So we went back to the topotecan data set and we plotted the differentially expressed genes with respect to its log fold change and gene length. And here in both the plots, you can see that the long genes that are downregulated were overrepresented as compared to the other genes. Next, we looked into the MECP2 mouse models for the differentially expressed gene, and when you look at more closely, you don't see overrepresentation of the long genes here, whereas you see overrepresentation of short genes. In the case of knockout models, you will see there's an overrepresentation of short downregulated genes, whereas in the overexpressed or TG mouse models, you will see there's an overrepresentation of short upregulated genes. Now, one of the key challenges in computation in this computational analysis was the absence of ground truth. and therefore we wanted to assess a benchmark dataset for length dependent changes. We went to CQC dataset, and the CQC dataset consists of 4 different types of samples: A, which is a universal human reference; B, which is human brain reference; C, which consists of 3 parts of A, 1 part of B; D, which contains 1 part of A and 3 parts of B. And these particular samples was generated across different sites and using different sequencers. We went to the Novartis dataset because it had the minimum amount of batch effects. Then we computed the beta ratio, and beta ratio is basically the proportion of concentration of every gene, which is B minus A divided by C minus A, which will follow 4:1 ratio. Theoretically, when you compute the gene expression or the beta ratio for different genes, it should follow 4:1 ratio. And the reason we did this was because beta ratio is independent of the gene length, and therefore no trend should be observed. Next, we visualize the Novartis dataset in terms of the MDS plot. And here in the case of CQC RNA seq MDS plot, the A is represented by red, the B or the brain samples is represented by green or triangle, the C is represented by blue, and the purple is represented purple, or the plus samples are represented by D. If you look more closely, the C clusters more closely to A because it has 3 parts of A and 1 part of B, and the samples with D clusters more close to B because it has 3 parts of B and 1 part of A. And when you look at the x-axis, you can calculate the distance in terms of the beta ratio. So in the case of A samples, the samples are clustering around -20. The B, it is clustering around +20. So B minus A would be 40. Next, to calculate C minus A, you have the C. In the case of C, you have the samples that are clustering around -10, and A is again at -20, so it becomes -10 plus 20, which is 10. So B minus A divided by C minus A will be 4:1, which has actually been observed through the MDS plot as well. In the case of CQC array data, when you calculate the same beta ratio distance, you will see that it follows 4:1 ratio. Now, what we were interested in is to look at the mean log to beta ratio versus the mean gene length. Typically, when one will actually calculate this, theoretically, you will have a horizontal line around around the y equal to 2 line. However, when we did that, when we calculated the beta ratio for these particular samples, you see a preferential upregulation of these genes around above 100 kb, and it was also observed in the case of CQC array data. Another intriguing results that was reported was the reciprocal relationship between MECP2 knockout and MECP2 overexpressed models. As you can see, in the case of MECP2 knockout models, there is a preferential upregulation of the genes, whereas in the case of overexpressed model, there is a preferential downregulation of the genes. We next plotted the samples based on the PCA plot, and we see that the PC1 can distinguish the sample based on the dosage of MECP2. Next, we investigated the brain samples in the Novartis dataset, and we found that similar structure was obtained from the samples that were prepared across 3 different libraries. So what we did was we compared, we first annotated these particular clusters similar to the knockout, wild type and TG clusters, as in the previous plot, where TG is the overexpressed model, and we calculated the running average plot based on that. That is based on library 1 divided by the library 2 and library 3 divided by the library 2. And as you can see, you see a preferential upregulation of the gene, which was actually observed in the knockout model, and preferential downregulation of the gene, which were observed in the overexpressed model, suggesting that just as biological variation can lead to a separation on a PCA plot, so can the technical variation based on the library preparation, and both can result in the same long gene bias as observed in the MECP2 datasets. Therefore, we hypothesize that this long gene bias can be due to the PCR amplification, because most of the samples were generated using RNA-seq or microarray protocol, and therefore it confounds the expression of long genes. To test this hypothesis, we generated nanostring dataset from CQC sample using a human pan-cancer panel which consisted of 750 genes. Across these 750 genes, there were 180 long genes and 570 short genes. We calculated the beta ratio for 750 genes in RNA-seq, microarray, and nanostring to assess the trend. Now we compared the mean log2 beta expression for short and long genes across 3 different platforms. We observed that the fold change of the long genes are overrepresented in RNA-seq and microarray dataset with a significant p-values. Whereas in the case of nanostring dataset, we see no difference in the average expression of short and long genes, suggesting that the preferential dysregulation of long genes was due to the PCR amplification bias. Next, we were interested in assessing the concordance between the RNA-seq and nanostring platforms. We generated the MECP2 knockout mouse model dataset across these 2 platforms, and we called differentially expressed genes across both the platform. Here, in the case of short gene and long gene, each dot in this particular plot represents a gene that is being called differentially expressed by either nanostring or RNA-seq platform, or both. The red dot shows that it is being called differentially expressed by both the platform. The green dot shows that it's being called as differentially expressed by nanostring platform, and the blue dot shows that it is being called differentially expressed by RNA-seq platforms. When we see for both the long genes and the short genes, when we assess their log fold change, we see that the genes with high fold change in expression, especially with a fold change of more than 20%, seems to be concordant to each other, whereas the genes that has lower expression are being called as differentially expressed in case of RNA-seq dataset, and that is consistent across both for long gene and short gene. When we actually assessed the absolute log fold change that is being computed using RNA-seq dataset and nanostring dataset, we saw that there is an overestimation of long genes. And which further supports our hypothesis that artifactual long gene trends are more likely to appear in amplification-based expression datasets. If you are interested in reading more about our analyses, you can actually go through the Nature Communication paper as shown in the lower right hand corner. Next, over to the conclusion. Misregulation of long genes, what we found was independent of the long gene trend. Long gene bias was not present in the nanostring dataset. Moreover, the long gene bias is present in amplification based transcriptomic technology like RNA-seq and microarray, which further confounds the dysregulation of long genes. And all the custom R scripts that have been used in this manuscript are available in this Zenodo workspace. You can download it and you can reproduce all our results and plots. Moreover, we are currently developing our R package for the researchers who are interested in assessment of long gene trend in their dataset. I would like to acknowledge my previous mentor, Professor Dr. Zandong Liu and Professor Huda Zogby for guiding me during this project, and Amy for actually generating the data sets and giving me the feedback regarding my analyses. Moreover, I would like to thank Professor William Lowry from UCLA for sharing his data set, which has been used in this manuscript. If you have any questions, please email me at this email ID, or you can tweet me at this Twitter handle. I would also like to thank Dr. Stephen Kin and Professor Stephen Foley for giving me this opportunity to present my work, especially during this pandemic. Thanks a lot, and you have a nice day. Bye.